Hey, if you haven't listened to the first chapter, then I think you should start with it. Betrayal Beneath the Surface, Tattoos, Piercings, and Lies. Chapter 2. I turned around, and not more than 15 feet away from me stood Lisa. Well, at least she sounded like Lisa, and looked like Lisa. But it couldn't have been her because Lisa had long hair, and she always wore it loose. If this lady had long hair, it was styled so that most of it was on the top of her head. She had a small green tattoo on the back of her head. Lisa disliked tattoos. I turned back to my mom and Les, and we continued our conversation. Then I heard laughter again and looked in her direction as she and her male companion headed back to the auditorium. The crowd had thinned enough for me to watch them leave. The back of her dress was cut almost to her waist, and the man put his hand on her back and slid around her waist under her dress. I managed to forget about the lady in the lobby long enough to enjoy the rest of the show. The next day at noon, I drove them to the airport. Lisa got home around 9 p.m. She was laughing and happy, and I assumed it was because she was home. When I asked her how the weekend had gone, she chatted on about the wine they had been drinking, about swimming in the lake, about the two girls swimming without clothes, and so on and so forth. I was beginning to feel bad about resenting her departure. That night we baked cupcakes, and as usual, it was very enjoyable. The next few days went normally. I worked on the outline of my next book, and Lisa did what Lisa usually did, and we baked cupcakes twice. And then, everything changed. Lisa wasn't home, and I was working on my plan. Whenever we came back from a trip, the first thing I did was unpack. Lisa always waited a couple of days, no matter how many bags she had. She would take out her makeup bag and leave everything else, including dirty clothes and underwear. Sometimes I would unpack for her. It always drove me crazy. I walked into our bedroom, and her bag, left over from the weekend, was still there. I opened it, and it turned out that no one had touched it. Everything was clean and ironed and neatly folded, just like it had been when she packed it. There was a piece of paper sticking out of one of the small compartments. I wouldn't have paid any attention to it, but there was a green shamrock taped to it. I pulled it out and looked at it. A picture of the shamrock was taped to the letterhead. The inscription read, "Congratulations on your new tattoo. Please be sure to follow the instructions below for the first few days." Below it was handwritten, "Lisa, I'm sure you'll love your shamrock, and I hope you enjoy the other surprises Gordon has in store for you." It was signed Eagle. The heading on the letter read, "Eagle Tattoos and Piercings," and it included an address. It was in a town not far from ours and closer to the city. I don't know how long I stood looking at the letter before I slowly put it back, closed my bag, and put it back. I sat on the back terrace until Lisa came home and found me there. I remembered the woman in the theater. I remembered her laugh and how she reminded me of Lisa. But most of all, I remembered the little green tattoo on her neck. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Just having a thought." "Planning your next book?" "No, just thinking." "Are you hungry?" "No, thanks." I didn't look at her, but I could feel her looking down at me. After a few seconds, she went inside. It was cold in our bed that night, and we never touched each other. The next morning, Chris called me. "When are you going to sign the contract and approve the cover design? The printer's waiting." "I've decided to hold off for a while, Chris." "What do you mean?" "I just don't want it published yet." "But, Matt?" "I'll call you when I'm ready." I hung up. "I'm going out for a couple of hours," I yelled, not knowing where Lisa was or if she could hear me. I drove to the town where Eagle Tattoo and Piercing was located. The sign on the door said they wouldn't open until noon. I sat in the car and waited. Eagle must have lived in the back of his living room because at noon the lights came on there and the open sign on the door lit up. I walked in and started looking around. "Hey man, what do you need?" said the man behind the counter, who I mistook for Eagle. "I'm thinking about getting a tattoo, but I don't know if I'm ready," I said. "That's okay, they're not for everyone. Look around and see if you fall for something." I looked through a couple of books of his examples. Some of them were real works of art. "Did you find anything you like?" he asked. I laughed. "There are certainly a lot of them, and very big ones. Anything smaller?" He pulled out a smaller book that had pictures of flowers, butterflies, crosses, dice, and lots of small individual things. There was even an acorn, and then I saw it. A green shamrock. I'd seen this one before. That's why I'm here. I saw it on a friend of an acquaintance of mine. Her name is Lisa. Lisa. Oh, right. She's one of Gordon's chicks. They came in here a couple of times. One of Gordon's chicks? Really? How many does he have? Seems like every couple of months he gets a new one. He pretty much talks everyone into that shamrock. What other tattoos does Lisa have? Only one tattoo, but she's thinking about getting a piercing. A piercing? Lisa? What kind of piercings? I asked. I shouldn't tell you this, but she wants her nipples and tongue pierced. You're kidding me. She certainly doesn't give me the impression of someone capable of that. You never know what these guys can talk chicks into. But why tongue and nipples specifically? I asked. Where have you been, boy? It makes the nipples more sensitive after they've been pierced. Both men and women love it. And the tongue dumbbell helps give the best blowjob a person can get. And between you and me, she has perfect breasts. So you've seen them? Of course I have. I always ask to see the breasts of women considering getting their tongues pierced, but she hasn't done it yet? Nope. She says it's not time yet. I stood stunned and shook my head. At that moment, another customer walked in, and I was forgotten about. I sat in the car for a long time before heading home. Tongue piercings? Nipple piercings? Not now, but maybe when the time comes? Is she really going to convince me that she has to do it? Would I not care if she did it? I would be very surprised, but probably wouldn't mind. I just never thought about it, and she never mentioned it. Maybe there was another reason for the wait. Maybe she figured I wouldn't be here. Many thoughts flashed through my mind. I got a headache. I returned home and decided to take a hot shower. After entering the house, I headed to the bedroom to take a shower. I didn't see Lisa and figured she was somewhere in the house. I stripped naked and headed into the shower. I opened the bathroom door. Lisa was sitting at the dressing table, turned away from the large mirror on the wall. She was holding her hair up with one hand and holding the mirror in the other. She looked into the mirror and smiled. In the split second that she realized I was here, I saw in the large mirror a green stain on the back of her head. She flinched, quickly let go of her hair, and it fell down her neck and back into its normal position. When I saw the green stain, our relationship was over. You scared me, she said. Without saying anything, I got in the shower and stayed there until the hot water ran out. A few more days passed. We hardly spoke at all. One morning, after breakfast, Lisa put the dishes away and came back with fresh coffee for both of us. After sitting down, she took a sip and spoke. Ginny and Beth from the gym are going into town Friday night, and I'd like to go with them. Would that be okay? I looked her straight in the eye for a long time. I don't care. I didn't ask when she'd be back. I didn't care about that either. I got up, carried my coffee into the study, and closed the door. I rarely closed that door. We hardly spoke until she left Friday morning, and then we just said goodbye. See you later. It was late Sunday when she came home. I didn't know for sure that she loved someone, but I believe in Occam's razor, which states that the simplest solution is probably mostly the right one. In my case, the incident at the theater, which included a man sticking his hand in her deep-cut dress, the tattoo, the visit to the Eagle, the suitcases of unused clothes, and her time with the girls, all pointed to her being involved with someone else. Did you have fun? Oh yeah, those girls were awesome. I'm glad I went. I came up behind her, grabbed her breasts, and squeezed her nipples. She screamed in pain. What happened? I asked, letting go of her. She turned to face me. She pressed her hands to her chest as if defending herself. I don't even know. They're very sensitive for some reason. I just looked at her and walked away. I went to bed remembering the hard, rounded things I felt when I squeezed her nipples, and she almost screamed. She had pierced them. How long was she going to keep it from me? Or had she already decided to cut me off from making cupcakes? The next morning, she was in the shower, and I opened the bag she'd brought with her for the weekend. Once again, it looked like no one had touched anything, not even her panties. You'd expect that they were at least worn and stained, but that wasn't the case. Had she really been walking around without clothes while she was gone? If she had been involved with this Gordon or anyone else, then perhaps she had. The next day, I took the train to New York. I walked into Chris's office and sat down. "Ready to sign the contract?" she asked. I didn't answer anything. What happened? "I have to tell someone, and I don't have any close friends or family, so I guess I choose you. I just ask that you keep it a secret for now." "What's wrong? Promise me you won't say anything, no matter who's involved. Okay? Matt, I promise? I promise. I think Lisa is having an affair." Chris looked at me silently. "I'm not sure, but I suspect it." So I started telling her everything I knew. When I got to the letter from Eagle and the surprises Gordon had in store for her, she went pale. Then I told her about my visit to Eagle and that Lisa and Gordon had discussed piercings. She turned around in her chair and looked out over the city. We were silent for a long time until I came to a single conclusion. "You know about it," I said. It was a statement, not a question. I watched her head move slowly up and down. I stood up, walked over to her chair, and turned it around. "For how long?" A long pause followed while she decided how much she was going to tell me. "A few months. Did they have a cupcake?" There was no reply. "The absence of a denial means that yes, there is one." She began to cry. "Who is this Gordon guy?" I asked. She pulled a tissue from a box on the table and blew her nose. She tossed it into the trash can, reached for another, blotted her eyes, and spoke. "His name is Gordon Willis, and he's my new boss. Well, the news is, he's only been here a few months, so you don't know him, and once they started dating, I made sure you didn't meet him." "How did they meet?" "Lisa came to have lunch with me. He was here, and they hit it off right away. She started visiting me more often, but she spent most of her time with him." "Is he married?" "He was engaged, but then he broke it off. Do you know why?" To be continued.